what did Ramana mean when he said that we should just be? I seem to remember him saying, don't meditate, just be. Don't think that you are, be. Don't think about being, you are. Just be. Don't meditate, just be, just be. Also, is paying attention to what a thought of our being refers to the same thing as paying attention to the thought I or I am referred to?
What I am refers to is our being. We don't have to think about our being, we just have to attend to our being. The passage that is referred to, where it is recorded that Bhagavan said, don't just be, don't meditate, just be, don't think that you are, just be. Bhagavan is emphasizing there that the real nature of self-attentiveness is just being. How can we, that is, in Nana, in the 6th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, what is just being? He says, Summa irupadavadu manate ātma-sarupa leka sevade. Just what just being is making the mind dissolve in ātma-sarupa. So how can we make the mind dissolve in ātma-sarupa? As Bhagavan has made it clear, we can make the mind dissolve in ātma-sarupa only by attending to our own being. So long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are nourishing and sustaining ego, as he implies in that verse 25 of Ullugnapram that I was referring to a short while earlier. So in order to bring about the dissolution of the mind in ātma-sarupa, what we need to attend to is only to ourselves. Bhagavan also implied this very clearly in Upadesha Undiyya. In verse 8 of Upadesha Undiyya, what Bhagavan says is that is, up to this point, he's been talking about nishkarmiya karma. That is, and he talks about nishkarmiya karma. There are 3 types of nishkarmiya karma. Nishkarmiya karma means action done without desire, and done for the love of God is the implication of what he says in verse 3. Then in verse 4, he says, this is certain. Puja, japa, and dhyana are actions of mind, speech, and body. In this order, each is superior to the previous one. What he means here is, that is in verse 3 he had said, but in verse 2 he said, action will not give liberation. Then in verse 3 he said, nishkarmiya karma, that is action done without desire, kartanaku, for God, implying for the love of God, will purify the mind and show the way to liberation. So action is not the way to liberation, but if action is done without desire and for the love of God, it will show the way to liberation. So what type of actions can we do? We can do puja, japa, and dhyana. That's action by body, speech, or mind. Then in verse 5, he says, what is puja? If you consider everything as God, whatever action you do, worshipping, doing appropriate action with the attitude that everything is God, is good worship of God. So he gives a very broad definition of worship. Then he talks about japa in the next verse. Then he talks about dhyana. Each of these is superior to the previous one. What does he mean by superior? It is more effective in purifying the mind. So up to verse 7, he's talking about action of body, action of speech, and action of mind. In verse 8, what he says is, rather than anya bhava, an anya bhava in which he is I, certainly is the best among all. What does he mean by anya bhava? Anya means what is other. Bhava in this context means meditation. So rather than meditating on what is other, the implication is rather than meditating on God as if he is other than ourselves. That is, so long as we're meditating on God as a name or form, God seems to be something other than ourselves. So rather than that, meditating on God as a name or form, as if he was something other than ourselves, Ananya Bhava. Ananya Bhava means meditation on what is not other. Not other than what? Not other than ourselves. And he clarifies that, Ananya Bhava, by saying, Avanaham ahum Ananya Bhava. Ananya Bhava, in which he is I. So with the understanding that God is that which is shining in our heart as I, meditating on nothing other than I is certainly the best among all. So what he refers to as Ananya Bhava here is self-attentiveness. It's ātma-vicāra. It's another way of describing ātma-vicāra. And he says it is certainly best among all. Why, in the context, best among all means it's the most efficacious way of purifying the mind. It is meditating on ourself alone, meditating on nothing other than ourselves, is the only means to destroy the mind. Not only is it the only means to destroy the mind, it's the most effective means to purify the mind. What is meant by purifying the mind? The impurities in the mind are the vasanas, Vishaya vasanas, the outward going inclinations. Those are weakened to the extent to which we hold on to self-attentiveness or Ananya Bhava. But then the important thing is the next verse. In verse 9, he says, Bhava Balatinal, by the strength of that meditation. Which meditation? The implication is that Ananya Bhava, that meditation on nothing other than ourselves. So here, Bhava Balatinal, by the strength of meditation, implies by the strength of meditation on ourself alone, meditation on nothing other than ourself. So in other words, by the strength of self-attentiveness, Satbhava tu irutale, being in Satbhava, which is bhavanatita, which transcends bhavana. Bhavana here implies meditation on other things. But meditating on anything other than ourself is a mental activity. Whereas meditation on ourself alone is not a mental activity, it is a cessation of all mental activity. So by the strength of that self-attentiveness, being in Satbhava, which transcends mental activity, alone is Parabhakti Tattva. So what he describes here as being in Satbhava, Satbhava means the state of being. So being in the state of being, that is what he means in other places when he talks of Sumairabdu, just being. So being in the state of being is just being. How to be in that state of being? Only by the strength of meditation. But what meditation? Meditation on ourself alone. Meditation on nothing other than ourself. So in that passage, which I think comes from talks or somewhere, when Bhagavan says, don't meditate, just be, he means don't meditate on anything other than yourself. When he says don't think about being, what he's talking about, he's referring there to many people when they hear, Tattvamasi, you are Brahman. Oh, I am Brahman. So I must think, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, that's the sort of, that's what I assume is he's referring to there. Because Bhagavan never said, don't attend to yourself. All Bhagavan's teachings are pointing to the core practice is this practice of self-attentiveness. As he described it in Nana, Sada Kalamam Manate Atmavil Vaitiraptu. Keeping the mind fixed on oneself, always keeping the mind fixed on oneself. That is alone is ātma-vicāra. That alone is the means by which we remain as we actually are, remain in the state of just being. And only by just being as we actually are can we know ourselves as we actually are.